We're going to call the meeting to order. Everybody grab a seat. So good evening. Here we are again. Welcome everybody to our April 2019 meeting. The first thing we're going to do tonight is call the meeting to order. And we're going to go ahead and adopt our meeting agenda. If there's no objections or anything that needs to be added. Right here looks like no. And the very first thing we do at every meeting is allow a segment for public comment on items that are not on our agenda. If it's on the agenda, we'll get to it later tonight. And before we get to the public comments, there's two housekeeping things we want to take care of. We have a project that we need to get some input on and submit some comments. And it's one that we need to review. They made a presentation with us last month when we were up at Bridlewood for the Dorado Hills Folsom self-storage project that's over off the Sophia Parkway and Green Valley Road, Shadowfax Lane area. So we have one resident in that area that's willing to work on a subcommittee to look at it and submit questions and comments, and then hopefully when we get that subcommittee finished up, they expect to be at the Planning Commission in June or July. So we'd like to have our comments in probably in May. At a minimum, we get a subcommittee report in, we could submit those comments and then do a formal vote in June prior to their Planning Commission meeting. So with that out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and ask, is there any public comment tonight for anything that's not on the agenda? Okay, that was your opportunity. So the first thing we do is the first word we hear from is from Supervisor Communications from District 1 Supervisor John Midall. And John, you're here in the corner. Yep. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. Well, good evening, and thanks for turning out tonight. The question I get asked most frequently now is, has Costco made a decision? And the answer is we haven't heard back yet. Originally they said middle of March, then they said the end of March, then they said the 1st of April, and here we are almost at the middle of April. We actually contacted them last Friday, our CAO's office, and they said, we haven't decided. When we make our decision, we will let you know. So we're still waiting. So nothing new on Costco. The most, I guess, recent activities at the county has been the pursuit of the vegetation management ordinance. There was a lengthy discussion at Tuesday's board meeting about that. In Dorado Hills, the impact is going to be relatively small, I believe, because our local fire department has the vacant lot ordinance. People are familiar with having to do the annual cleanup to get rid of the weeds, get rid of the ladder fuels. But there's a lot of concerns and somewhat opposition from the more rural parts of the county. And you can imagine somebody that lives on, say, a 5-acre piece, and they've got 100 pine trees on their property, and they've got a lot of brush, and they've got a low-lying limbs, and they're looking at a significant amount of expense to clear off all the grasses and then to remove the ladder fuels, which could be as high as 10 to 12 feet off the ground to get rid of those. So the fire that started in the grass can't get up into the tree through those ladder fuels and then basically take the whole tree out and become a major event. So there's a lot of concern with that, but again, I think for Dorado Hills, that's a minor consideration. There's several other things. One of the things I wanted to tell you is we're getting close to having public meetings for our Human Rights Commission. The county had a Human Rights Commission going back several years ago. It was kind of disbanded. That's been restarted. So Supervisor Shiva Frenson and Supervisor Sue Novosel are the two ad hoc committee members for the Human Rights Commission. So they will be sending out notifications of their public meeting where people will be encouraged to come and talk to some of the activities going on. Alan is here this evening, and he serves as the chair. Alan Stansbury. So he serves as the chair of our Human Rights Commission. He was appointed by District 1, myself, so Alan is our representative on that. And there's more to come on that. But for people who have heard of incidents where there has been mistreatment, accusations, verbal abuse, those kinds of things, we want to understand what they are and determine what the county can do to try to mend fences and get people to be more civil with one another. I'm not sure how you actually do that, but that's for the commission to figure out and to try to work with it. So it's not only the residents we're trying to make sure they have proper temperament, it's visitors. So you have visitors and residents and the interaction that goes on there too. So a little bit more to come on that later. And then the other big one that we've been working on is the cannabis ordinance. And people, I think, understand that the ballot measure was passed. All 5 of the ballot measures passed. So the county's been very busy in defining the specific procedures for cannabis, where it will be allowed to be grown indoors and outdoors, both the recreational and the medicinal. And then where you have dispensaries, et cetera, et cetera. So that ordinance is still taking shape. We're taking a proceed cautiously approach. So my guess is it will not come to a public reading, the draft ordinance, for probably another 3 to 4 months. We've done a lot of surveying of other counties and other states, including Colorado and Oregon, to try to determine what their biggest impacts were and what we can do to avoid living through their worst situations. So we're trying to use a best practices, lessons learned approach on that, but there'll be more on the cannabis to come. But for this particular growing season coming up, there will not be any permits allowed in El Dorado County. We're just too late in the game at this point, so it'll be next year. But there are obviously grows that go on in the county that are the illegal ones, and that's what our sheriff is tasked to try to enforce and take care of. But we get annual reports of people complaining because the odor from the neighbor's yard and all those kinds of things. But those are probably the biggest things that are out there. So does anybody have any general questions that I can answer outside of the those categories or within those categories as far as it goes? Very good. And seeing none, I'll turn it back over to you, John. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. At the beginning of the month at our the El Dorado Hills Community Council meeting, we had a really interesting conversation, discussion about road maintenance and road maintenance, how it happens, how it's paid for, what the conditions of the roads are, what we'd like them to be. And following that, we asked if Director Rafael Martinez, Director of County DOT, would come back and have a talk with us tonight about the impact of development on roads and how new roads happen and how the impacts are measured and sort of the process of what happens. So Rafael's here tonight to talk to us, and if you're ready, we'll have you come up and what's going on.
Great. Thank you, John. Thank you, Supervisor Ken. Good evening, all of you. Rafael Martinez, Director of Transportation for El Dorado County. As John mentioned, I was here just last week talking to you about road pavement, condition of roads, and how our roads are maintained, as well as a little bit of history on SB1, the gas tax that was just recently, I would say, I just rectified or confirmed in the last election. And just to clarify, I want to clarify one thing because I think I might have been a little unclear. There was a little confusion. People were asking, why is it that SB1, if it's an additional revenue source for the state that goes to the municipalities, how come is it that we weren't solvent? And I guess I didn't explain that very clearly. So it's essentially, back in 2010, we collected $8 million from the state of California that was coming from the original gas tax. Just last year, we received $6 million. So adjusted for inflation, we should have been getting 12. As well as we used to get $3 million from the feds due to the timber fees. So that's a reduction of $7 million that should have been coming to the county, but unfortunately was not. And therefore, that has been our subsequent deficiency year after year. And so when the state of California said, oh, it's okay, El Dorado County, you're going to get this last year, you're going to get $2 million from SB1, and that's going to fix all of your problems. We looked at them and we said, you're kidding us. That's not even going to be close to enough. There are a lot of issues that we have with the way SB1 was proposed in terms of how much they're collecting and how much is going to the agencies, particularly El Dorado County, and our supervisors are extremely upset, and we're going to be sending a memo to the Capitol as well as to our local representatives in terms of expressing our concerns and that they need to do more for us because we will not be able to sustain our current rehab and repair of our current road system. But that's not why I'm here today. Today I was asked to basically explain how is it that we move forward with our developments and the roads, and how are they calculated into the PCI of the maintained mileage in El Dorado County. So essentially, PCI is Pavement Condition Index, and we use that as a measure of, I guess, letter grades for your kids in school, A through F. Well, ours goes through 0 to 100, 100 being best, 0 being dirt roads. And so we, on a yearly basis, we measure our, not yearly, we do come up with a average score on a yearly basis, but I believe we take measurements of our county roads every 2 years, and I'm looking to my deputy director, Brian Mullins, over there, who is in charge of maintaining our roadways and the safety of our infrastructure in El Dorado County. So we actually take measurements every 2 years, and then we calculate what the PCI is of our current county. And I believe, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, that I do have the calculation for not only the county but for this area as well. So if you just bear with me for 1 second, I will scroll through here very quickly. And average PCI, yes I do. So for District 1, which is El Dorado Hills, it is 73.98. For District 2, it is 67.74. District 3, it is 64.57. District 4 is 72.83. And District 5 is 56.79. And that is in the Tahoe area. And the average PCI for the entire county is 64. So what we do is, on a regular basis, we calculate what the PCI is of our roads. We also take into account the average daily traffic. So that means how many vehicles are on a road. And it's kind of a calculation as to, well, you have this PCI, if it's a low PCI, but it's a low ADT, meaning not very many people are driving on it. Well, we might not get to it this year, maybe not the next year, maybe in a few years. If you have a low PCI and a lot of ADT, a lot of people are traveling on this road, we'll probably get to that road in an expeditious manner because, statistically speaking, it's probably going to go under disrepair in a much sooner time frame. So based on that, we try and balance out the funds that we get on a regular basis from our gas tax, and we proportion that out to all the different districts. As you can see, District 5 being the Tahoe area, although it is the lowest, they do have lower average daily traffic. So, like I said, it's a balancing act that Brian and I do every year to make sure that we are representing the entire county fairly. But District 1 does have a pretty good PCI of 73, which is actually considered good on the national scale for PCIs. What these county used to do in the past was essentially assume that, well, it's going to be collecting a certain amount of gas tax, and therefore it will be sufficient enough based on the population to maintain a good road surface for a certain population for a certain given time frame. But over the years, we realized that that isn't the case now with a lot more increased traffic. Families are having a lot more number of vehicles. People are taking a lot more trips than they used to. People travel in their cars a lot more than they used to. That calculation just isn't adding up, which is the reason why maintenance costs for us continue to increase year over year, and how that $8 million in 2010 really should have been $12 million in 2018 from the state of California. But nonetheless, we made efficiencies and adjustments internally in DOT to accommodate for that. So, but we still realized we still had shortfalls. We still had negative issues. So what we did is now with all new development, we have been incorporating their fair share portion into collectors and arterials that are adjacent to their developments. So before, many of these developments in this area weren't paying a contribution through property tax for the maintenance of their roadways. Now we collect that, make sure that that is part of the not only the TIM fee, but also the yearly fee that is part of the property tax that is incorporated into the newer homes for the region. So now we're able to have in addition a new revenue source that helps the county and DOT to be able to sustain development that's coming in, because that had always been the complaint to our department staff, was the fact that you're allowing more development to come in, yet the impact to the infrastructure is getting worse. We had to come up with a different mechanism to make sure that any new development was paying their fair share, and although a development might be grandfathered in and not have to pay, that any new development does have to pay for additional maintenance for not only if it's a private road, but any public road that is a collector or an arterial and it's adjacent to that development. Case in point, there's a development in the Bass Lake area that we are working out currently those fees and what that allocation is going to be. I believe, let me see, and then if there, I don't know if you're speaking about the Malcolm Dixon project yes, the Baylor says, exactly. If that's right now in the planning stages, but if they were to come in, we'd probably go into a discussion with them in terms of what their contributions would have to be for the collectors and the arterials in their region as well. And so those are the steps that we are taking as a department to try and squeeze water out of a rock, per se, to make sure that if developers are coming in, that we're able to get them to pay for their fair share. Now, I know a lot of people have mentioned about development coming in and the congestion that it brings in some of the level of services that impacts our roadway surface and our networks, our circulation. And essentially, the county has to abide by the CEQA process, and so does any agency, as a matter of fact, whether you're Folsom or Rancho Cordova or the city of Sacramento. The CEQA process states what the level of service can be for any developer to mitigate for their impacts to any roadway surface. Now, unfortunately, for residents such as ourselves who live in somewhat of a more rural community, any kind of impact for us can be a negative one. And I wish that we can have a relative barometer that we can set to developers, but we can't. We are bound by the state's criteria in terms of what that is, and whether you're in a rural community or you're in a metropolitan community, that barometer is the same. There have been agencies that have tried to contrary the studies that have come to the municipalities, and they have been met with lawsuits because similar to a homeowner not being wanting to be told what color to paint their house, agencies do not have the criteria of saying this is how many homes or this is how many methods and means that you can utilize your property. If somebody owns a property in the state of California, the state of California has stayed under the MAP Act that you have certain thresholds that you need to meet as minimums. Now, as counties, we can set some different standards in terms of a general plan and say, well, this region we do want to keep more of a rural setting, this region to be a more urban setting, this region a more retail commercial setting. And so then we are given some leeway, but we're still bound by the California MAP Act and by the legislature of the state in terms of what we can and cannot do for restricting impacts. So we try and work very closely with developers to make sure that we are adequately addressing the traffic impacts that come into our county. As a matter of fact, what we have now taken further into the impact that occurs to our county is the ITS program. This is a intelligent transportation systems program that essentially it allows for us to work with the developers to say, hey, your impacts might sway up or down depending on the economy, on the region. Therefore, we can't just base the impact that you have on our county on an A, B, C, or a through F scale because it might change on any given year. So why don't you help be part of the community, take some pride and ownership in the community, and contribute to an ITS program, which what it does is it synchronizes and connects all the signal lights within a region so that you have a more a smart system, a synchronized, coordinated system that allows for platooning of cars, so you don't get to one signal and then it's red or it's red, and then you get the green, and then you get to the very next signal, and then you get another red, and then you get to the very next signal, and it's another red. This actually creates a platoon, and with sensors in the asphalt, it actually detects cars coming miles away as opposed to just within the intersection. So it provides for less congestion, less greenhouse gases, and a better sense of circulation throughout a region. And so those are the types of implementations that we're working on with the development in this area in particular. And so what I'm going to do now is, and then I'll open it up to questions right afterwards, is go through some of the development projects that we have going on in the county. And I'm only going to discuss it from a transportation standpoint. Obviously, I know that you guys speak on a planning perspective, but I'm just going to speak to that effect from a transportation aspect. So in terms of land development, we have currently Silver Springs Unit 1, and these are the ones that are Silver Springs Unit 1. That's going to be under construction probably this year. Serrano J6, which is at the corner of Bass Lake and Serrano over there by the new grocery store. That's going in as well, going under construction very soon. The Saratoga development, as we all see the construction alongside the freeway. Saratoga will go through this summer, and fingers crossed, we believe that Wilson might go through this summer as well. And then Lennar has the 55 and over homes over there off of Carson Crossing. And all these are all either projects that are currently in construction or will be in construction this summer. Some of the long-range planning development projects that DOT is working on is the Lennar Bell Woods and Bell Ranch projects that are off of Bass Lake. The good thing is, with that development, we are going to be able to finally have enough funding to finalize the construction of Bass Lake and Country Club, which we feel is direly needed. And so we're enthusiastic to work with the developer to get that project completed. And then the vineyards that is working right now, but that is definitely on the plan, on longer range planning. And now in terms of CIP, capital improvement projects that we have in the region, the completed projects, we have the New York Creek Bridge bike path that is just completed, the Silva Valley bike path that was completed. We still have a few minor drainage issues that we're having to finalize up, but we hope to have that completed by this summer. And then our future CIP projects, we have the bike trail that is going to be going along Francisco between El Dorado Hills and Green Valley. That portion, swath of land there on the west side, that's going to be a bike trail. And actually the good news with the next one here, the Bass Lake Fire Station, we just got confirmation, and Supervisor, you're going to be glad to hear this, that the Bass Lake Fire Station, what station is that, Brian? 86. Has agreed to work with us, and we're going to be having a satellite yard over there at that fire station, as opposed to, and I'm sure you've seen our loader and the mounds of gravel over there off of Francisco. Well, this summer we're finally going to be moving that over to our satellite location with the fire station, and I want to thank Supervisor very much for helping us get that accomplished with the fire station. They were very accommodating, so thank you very much. And then in terms of road rehab, like I said, when it comes to rehabilitating roads, we take the ADT and the PCI. Well, the lowest PCI that we have in the El Dorado Hills area is in the Lake Hills community. And so we're going to be doing a road rehab there. And if you want more details as to what that entails and the type of treatment, it's a rubberized asphalt that is laid over, and I'm not doing it any justice. Brian can give a lot better description of how that works. Brian is here to answer if you have any questions on that. And that's going to happen this summer as well. And then lastly, we are looking at the El Dorado Hills Boulevard rehab. That is a currently it's a $5.6 million rehabilitation project. The reason why it's so expensive is because the state of California, actually, and the federal government, requires us, when we do large arterials, that we have to bring them up to federal standards in terms of the ramps, the crosswalk ramps. And so they're not up to federal standards. I'm sure most of you have seen those yellow plates with the indentations on them. Well, that's the federal standard. We have to bring those up to standard, so we'd have to redo the curb ramps. That's why it's so expensive. We initially, when we were told that we were going to be receiving $5 million the first year from SB1, we were anticipating doing the El Dorado Hills Boulevard rehab this summer. But 2 years ago, when we heard that the number was going to be less, and last year when we confirmed it, we realized we're going to have to put that one off. So right now we are anticipating, if not next summer, definitely by the summer of 2021, to have the funding for the El Dorado Hills Boulevard rehab. That pretty much concludes it. If anybody has any questions regarding DOT, road rehabilitation, or development having to do with DOT, I'd be more than glad to answer those questions. Yes, you.
You mentioned ITS.
Would you come up to the microphone, please? Thank you.
You mentioned ITS, Intelligent Transportation System.
Yep.
Do you have cost analysis on what that's going to cost?
So currently we have region-wide. In the El Dorado Hills area, we are calculating it's approximately going to be about $5.3 to $5.6 million for an ITS system. We've already collected $800,000 from developers who are working with us on that. The good part of that is currently the state of California, as well as the federal government, is heavily subsidizing and providing grants for those types of projects. So if we came up with just a quarter, or even maybe a half or a quarter of the funds, that would probably be sufficient for a match to go for a design and construction of that project. So we're hoping here, maybe within the next 2 years, starting in phases, and probably starting at El Dorado Hills, the interchange, and synchronizing those lights for Caltrans. I have to say they don't do a very good job at synchronizing those lights. I saw a question over here. Yes?
Yeah, right here. You talked about TIM fees, and I'm familiar with TIM fees and what developers pay with respect to that, but you also talked about something else that you've asked developers to contribute to related to traffic impact, and I'm sorry, that's what I thought TIM fees were for, and you're getting developers to voluntarily contribute. What taxing mechanism is actually in place for them to be paying more in traffic impact fees? And the only reason I ask that is because it's not about developers, it's the consumers that actually have to pay for this. The developers just pass it on to higher home prices and everything else here. So
yeah,
we end up being stuck with that. And then again, we continue to see the TIM fees here for this district substantially higher than in many of the other districts within this county. So all that money flows up the hill to deal with your PCIs of the rest of the county. So why is it that we have a need with all the development going on down here that we have to continue to pay for more traffic impact?
Because a lot of the residents in the community have said that they feel that what a level of service F is categorized per the CEQA requirements to them, what a level of service C is categorized by CEQA really feels like an F. So they're saying it's not making sense. You're saying that this is an acceptable level of service, yet to us it's not an acceptable level of service. We're getting stuck at lights. We're feeling the congestion in the morning and in the evening. Why is it that we're having to deal with congestion, and yet, Mr. Traffic Engineer, you're telling us that it's an acceptable level of service? So this is a mechanism, and it's solely voluntary. We're asking the developers to say, hey, work with us because it's going to benefit your development. It's going to benefit the community because it's going to allow for better circulation of the roadway. Now, do they have to do that? No, because it's not part of the CEQA process.
You're talking about the ITS right there.
ITS, yes.
What you were also mentioning earlier about additional traffic impact fees that you're trying to collect from these developers is the way I interpreted it. If I heard you incorrectly, then there's no.
Well, and maybe I misspoke. So there is the development impact fees that go to the construction of major roadway arterials, collectors, and secondaries throughout whether it's this zone, and this is zone 8, and then there's other zones in the county. And oh, by the way, we are going for a zone modification this May, and the other zones in the county, they are going to be going up much higher. Essentially, they pay for the large construction having to do with that TIM fee that right now currently for Zone 8 is $29,000 per unit. Goes for major construction, so widenings, roadways, interchanges. For example, the Silver Valley interchange itself was approximately $20 million. So those are big ticket items that those developer impact fees goes towards.
Okay, I'm sorry, I don't mind when you
So Raphael, I think that the confusion here is when a developer comes forward and wants to form a development agreement, which gets into a different category, and there's a community benefit that's allowed them in terms of an ask of providing additional funding for certain types of things. This is related to Central El Dorado Hills and other projects, but it's only when a development agreement kicks in that it's not a TIM fee. It's really a negotiation process because the developer benefits from the development agreement, and presumably the community should benefit from it. So a lot of those discussions are truly a closed-door negotiation to try to figure out how do we make sure that the community gets the best benefit they can and the developer gets the terms they want in the development agreement within reason, right? So it's truly negotiate. That's the way some additional funds come to the county for various purposes, including perhaps road maintenance.
Okay.
It's to TBD.
Okay, I
It's not
understand
a
that
team
part.
fee. It's not a team
Okay,
fee.
so it's gonna be,
Right.
no other tax, it's a development agreement that's
Right.
negotiated.
Right.
Okay, it still gets passed on, but I get it.
Yeah, above my pay scale, that's why he's here. Yes, sir.
I have a question. White Rock Road,
Yes.
at the county of, right at the county line between El Dorado County and Folsom. The Folsom side of that road is absolutely horrible,
Yes.
okay? Does your department contact Folsom and say, you know, guys, you should really be doing something with that part of the road?
We do. It's somewhat difficult because similar to there are roads on our side that they tell us, hey, you really need to be doing something with your road. So it's a bit of a back and forth, but we try to work together cooperatively to try and nudge each other to get improvements that would be beneficial to both agencies. We have, they're called 2-on-2 meetings that we meet about twice a year. I think our next meeting is coming up sometime in either June or July. So when we do, I'll definitely be reminding them of that. They're going to be reminding me about Bellagio and Saratoga. So I'm sure it's going to be an interesting conversation.
We should tell them to keep in mind that you have the connector that wants to come through.
Yes.
Which will bring major changes to this area insofar as signalization and other things that they have to consider.
Yes.
That the connector has to consider. The other thing I want to mention is that many people here and myself were interested in that bike path going along, the one that you mentioned from Harvard that goes to Appian Way.
Oh, yes.
All right. That bike path, we had said when we first saw the plans that it's too narrow. Okay.
The bike path itself?
The path itself is too narrow.
Okay.
Number one. Number two, it has huge drainage problems.
Yes.
That's number two. And number three, we had asked that some kind of stenciling be put on the road so that people know how to walk and to ride on that road, especially being it's narrow.
Okay.
And if you take a look at the city of Folsom, what they do on their roads, they have stencils actually of footprints showing which way people should be walking, and even the dogs which way they should be walking. So
They walk backwards.
you know, being that path is narrow, I think
Sure.
it to be stenciled is very, very important, and I think that road, because it's so close to a school, is going to be very, very well and heavily traveled. So
Okay.
I just wanted to make
That was with a grant, and I do know that we wanted to actually have a wider path, as well as we wanted to extend portions of that trail, but the construction estimates actually came in lower than what the bids came in, so we had to scale that back. And because of that, we could have done a complete drainage analysis for that, and typically for roadways we do, because roadways are a primary source of transportation for the general public, and so we go and spend the additional $200,000 that it takes to do some kind of analysis such as that. We knew we were going to have to come back and do some drainage touch-up after this season. That's why we built it during the summer or fall of last year, because we said, all right, once the rainy season comes in, then we'll know whether we eyeballed this correctly or not. And there were some areas where we missed it. And so we already had a contingency for that. And so we're looking at spending an additional $40,000 to remedy the issues. We felt that was more beneficial than having to do a $200,000 drainage study. But Case in point, I appreciate the comment about the stenciling. I'll talk to the project manager. He's going to be doing the drainage issues, resolving the drainage issues here within the next few months. I'll see if maybe we can add stenciling because that's not very much money.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, sir, in the back.
It sounds like the development along Bass Lake Road is going to pay for improvements of Bass Lake, which it really needs, but I'm curious about the plans for the Bass Lake 50 interchange because you're putting more cars on Bass Lake Road. And right now, rush hour time eastbound is awful. Cars are backing up down 50, and there's also impaired visibility, whether it's eastbound or westbound exiting. So it just seems like all this development is going to fix Bass Lake, but what's the source of funding for Bass Lake 50 interchange? Is that more development?
Thank you for asking that question. It's a very good question. The TIM fee that we do collect as part of the developers' fees is also pays for different portions. Not only does it pay for zones, it also pays for there's a TIM fee called TIM fee US 50. So essentially, any interchange or intersection that is adjacent to US 50 can utilize that funding source for improvements. And just, I believe, 4 months ago, that intersection that you're speaking of triggered the warrant for a signal to be installed. So we are actually going to be including that signal into our capital improvements project, and we're going to be starting the design this year for that location. And any additional improvements such as the country club alignment is going to vastly improve that interchange, which happens to be the worst intersection in the county because of its proximity to the freeway. So by the fact that we're working with a developer to realign Country Club, that's going to be an improvement with a signal, as well as the signal that the TIM fee is going to pay for at the interchange will make improvements at that location.
Where is the signal going? How is that going to help exiting eastbound traffic?
The signal is going to be on the eastbound exit. It's going to be on the eastbound exit. That's where the signal is going to be at.
Okay.
And then there's going to be a signal at Country Club in Bass Lake.
Okay, I had a question about Country Club also.
Yes.
I moved to this area about 5 years ago and attended a meeting where I was told that Country Club might start within 5 years, but it would probably be longer. Now we're talking about EDH 52 being developed, and whether it's Costco or something else. Is the plan to start at Bass Lake and end at Silva? Is it possible with the development of EDH 52 that you start at the west end and bring Country Club up around the church to get up to Bass Lake? And one of the concerns I have is that, specific concern is that the left exit out of Serrano's Entrada Gate is going to be closed. There's no way you can make a left turn once all that traffic starts going there. So it's more than likely the cars are going to come down Country Club and drop their children off for the school on Country Club. So if you consider a drop-off area or a separate side street there, and it doesn't matter whether it's Costco, I said, that's part of what's going to happen. It seems to make more sense that you would start at the west end with Country Club and head up toward Bass Lake.
Actually, I can defer to the supervisor because he's been harping on this since it was brought up because the schools is one of our biggest concerns and it is one of the biggest challenges that the county has. See, the state of California places school sites. I'd almost have to say, the technical term willy-nilly. The county has no say in terms of where schools end up, and for whatever reason, they've decided to put the number of schools on as they have on Silva Valley. And that location has its complexities, and we see that there probably would be some additional ones for that location. Not particularly in the morning, because Costco's peak hours, morning peak hour is different than the typical retail, but in the afternoon that could be pose a problem. So if and when we find out whether Costco is proposing to come in or not, that is going to be one of our key aspects to design and see if we can remedy the pickup drop-off and the circulation within the school and the Costco or any other big box, because that site was developed for big box, whether it's Walmart or Costco. That site, whoever the developer is to improve that location, we would be working very closely to make sure that the site is going to mitigate any of the impacts, not only that they impact, but that is already currently proposed. You have another question?
Costco opens at 10, but I think the gas pumps open at 7.
Right.
So you're going to have a lot more traffic over there.
And we would be working with them. I believe the conceptual is that the gas station would be on the other side, but that's another question. You had a question right here in the front.
Yeah, it was separate on the, just actually curious on the bike trail they were talking about earlier from Harvard to Appian. Are they going to put a crosswalk across Silver Valley either at the New York Creek, where the New York Creek bike trail starts, or at Charter Way? There's no crosswalk at this point.
I believe that they will. I can't answer that definitively. I'm going to make a note of that because I need to look into it. But my project manager isn't here, and he probably would have been able to answer it immediately. But I'll look into it and I'll get it back to the commission, and they'll probably give you that answer.
Okay.
Alrighty? Okay, great. I saw a question back here. In the back.
Just a comment. You said that 52 was developed for big box and Walmart, so whatever's there is what was developed. I was at a meeting here a few years ago, and the picture that was shown was that was going to be a connection to Rusey Ranch and a road out for Serrano with no development there. That was around the time that I bought my house here. So that was the plan that was presented at a meeting just like at a meeting like this a few years ago. So it was not that property was not developed for big box until only recently. It's an important distinction there.
And I don't know if John can answer
The timing on that, because there's a lot of history, obviously. And,
well, when I bought my house, I went to the Serrano place, and that was the picture they showed me. And it was definitely after I moved in that was shown.
I know. I have a similar thing, but the developer shows you one thing. They don't own the property, so that's one. But it was
Parker did own the property.
in 2012 is when it was rezoned.
Residential.
Yeah, that's in June of 2012 is when I saw this picture, so that's kind of curious.
Well, they started the process in 2008. So, but I mean, that's
Interesting. I didn't know that in 2012.
And actually, I think technically it started in 2004 was when they talked about it. 2008 is when they dug in, and 2012 is when it was approved.
So when was that information they put to public? If it started in 2008, because I didn't see it in 2012 when I bought my house.
Well, the board puts out an agenda for every meeting. The planning commission puts that out.
Can I give you my email address? Because I'd love to see that agenda when that was put out.
Well, that's the thing is that it's not our agenda, but we can try and find it. The county electronic documents start in about 2008. A lot of times they're not there, but we can ask for them. So if you want to put your email on the sign-in form at the back before you leave tonight, and put a star next to it so I know, and then we'll see if we can find
I would
it.
recommend that someone put together the timeline of those documents because that's going to be an important matter in the upcoming litigation that's going to come from this. Because it's a complete blind side to all the people that live over there.
Can I make a suggestion? Why don't you volunteer to help put the time together? Remember, we're all volunteers here. We're not official. We spend a lot of our volunteer time working to improve the community.
Okay.
If we need the people who are most affected by this proposal, or by any proposal in any part of the county, to get involved, because we just don't have enough time, bandwidth, to do what we do on our volunteer time.
Okay.
So you make the suggestion, you gotta step up and maybe get together with some people here who can advise you on how to look through the county documents, but you gotta do the research yourself.
It's in Dorado Hills, Rick. Thank you for that suggestion, and maybe I'll do it. But I'm a partner at an accounting firm. I've got 2 kids. I coach their kids. I know we all busy people.
Yeah.
But who's our representative as an El Dorado Hills resident for matters like this? I'm sure what is the planning commission doing? How could there be a matter more important than that on any priority list?
Well, obviously, Supervisor Heidel represents El Dorado Hills. We have a planning commissioner, John Vega, who is not here tonight, but regularly attends these meetings and the community council meetings. I think that the county not the officials, but the county has generally not done a good job about informing residents of what's going on. But basically, unfortunately, we have to take the responsibility to go look at the county websites and to call the county planning department and say, what's going on with this project? What conditions have been imposed on it? What it's got to do? We have to step up. I mean, you know, I'm involved with a lot of these county projects, and most of them don't affect me because I'm over on Green Valley and Silva. You know, am I going to be affected by if Costco's through? Not as much as the other residents, but I'm still going to these meetings. I'm going to read all the reports. I will question it. I don't care so much about what the result is. I just care that the process works as it is, that no one gets favored, that developers don't get any shortcuts, that planning doesn't get any shortcuts. One of the failures, I think, is that right now, I believe planning development, they only have to give to within 500 feet, John, 1,500 feet, if your property is that close to the development. And so, you know,
I don't know the exact number. I think it's 500-foot minimum as a state requirement, but I think our actual policy at the county now is 1,000 feet or 1,500 feet. Is it 1,000 now?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so 1,000 feet. So we've doubled basically what I think the state requirement is to make sure the notification is at least within 1,000 feet of that. And that's today's rules. That's not what it was in 2000.
And I just want to add that Tim's right. Back 4, 5, 6 years ago, the county wasn't doing a very good job in terms of getting the messaging out, getting the word out. As of about 3 to 4 years ago, it's made a huge change. This is, I believe, maybe the 10th public speaking assignment that I've done just this year, as well as Mel is in the back. He's with the planning department. Tiffany Schmidt, she's the planning director, and I think she's been to about 10 of these this year as well, partnering up with me. And so we're trying to do a better job to getting so that we don't have, because in the 4 years ago we were getting a lot of complaints that, well, I didn't know, how come nobody told us? And you know what? People weren't getting the message out because we were, working in our own little bubble, in our own little vacuum, posting things either on the web or just at the buildings. And, people have busy lives with children. They don't have time to, go out and do that kind of research. Fortunately, you do have individuals such as these who do volunteer their time to grasp that and then transmit it out to all of you guys. But as well as you're all more than welcome now. Our county website is a lot more advanced in terms of providing the information. Either emailing my email, the planning department, our telephone numbers are on the county website as well. So that if you have questions, don't depend on your real estate agent, please, for crying out loud. Do not depend on your neighbor. Do not depend on property owners or developers. Ask the county. That's what we're here for. We will be able to answer your questions a lot better than we have in the past because that's what our supervisors have required. That's our mandate now, to make sure that we're providing that kind of information. So I'm glad you brought up that question. I'm glad you brought up that comment because that has been one that I have heard a lot, and I'm glad that I was able to address it. John?
Are there any more questions? We don't want to keep it. I just got one right here in front.
I'm Richard Ross, a resident here. First of all, on another group, I would express my appreciation to everybody here for just a 3-minute presentation on good governance. And good governance starts with the county getting the information out. And the other side of it is the public making the effort to know what's going on that affects it.
Yeah.
And generally, we don't speak up until our box is scored. Okay? That's the reality. And that's our mistake. But my question to you is, first of all, thank you for coming tonight. And secondly, earlier in your presentation, you gave ratings for the 5 different districts relative to the quality or the standard that their roads were listed at.
Yes.
How are those numbers derived?
They are done by technicians going out into the field and actually taking visual measurements, taking pictures, and then based on the type of either cracking, pothole, or deformation that they see on the roadway, it has a categorized PCI, and then depending on how many of those we see in a percentage square footage for a roadway, it is then calculated for the entire stretch of the road.
Okay. Are those numbers influenced by the fact that in some areas you may have greater new development and therefore newer roadways than in other districts where the development is not as fast, and therefore the surface area of roads is substantially less and older, while we have a larger surface area. But the newer stuff is going to be in better condition, and in a sense, does that raise the average relative to our older roads?
That does, but that doesn't take away, so the average for a district doesn't negate the fact that if we have a extremely low PCI for an old existing road, if once again it has a relatively high PCI, we will still go out to modify that location even though the average for that district is high. So whether the district is high, that doesn't matter. That's more relative for the the elected officials and for some California state criteria. But in terms of the PCI for any given area, we look at an area and we say, what's the lowest PCI in this entire area? Okay, it's this one. This one might be very, very new, right next to it, but this is an old existing road, has a low PCI, high ADT, we're going to modify that one.
Thank you.
Okay? All right, last question.
My name's Wade Flanto. I had a question about the fee structure. So you have the fees that you get from the taxes if you're doing a development, say, like a Costco. But outside of that, for the additional negotiations that you spoke of, are you involved in those in any way? Or are like outside people, you said that was like kind of behind the scenes.
On development agreements, yes, our Director of Transportation is involved with those discussions. Our planning department is, our CAO is, our auditor controller. That's new as of about 9 months ago. Before there was a single person, the Director of Planning, who was involved in those development agreement discussions. We've changed that now to have it be a county team representing the most influenced and knowledgeable parts of the organization. So
excellent, yeah. I was my concern is like, do we have someone in those meetings who knows something about our current situation, locally, right? And it makes sense to have somebody who knows about that, right? To make recommendations. Okay, thank you.
All right, well, thank you all very much for your time. Yes?
Would you also just mention what we're doing with the schools? For instance, Claremont, the idea of putting in a signalization there with grant monies and stuff to try to clean up the traffic around some of our local schools, because I think it's important for people.
So, supervisors, speaking to the fact that, as I mentioned earlier, we have no control over where the state puts these schools, and so we have to deal with the impacts. But we are meeting, I think, on a quarterly basis with the school districts to try and see if we can partner up for grants, either through the state or through the federal government, to try and mitigate some of the impacts. So one of the things that we're looking at is widening on Silva Valley, right in front of, oh my gosh, what's the name?
Silva Valley Elementary.
Silva Valley Elementary School, to try and do either a pickup drop-off there or have the buses there to increase capacity and improve the circulation. And then another improvement is going to be widening at Harvard and Silva Valley of that intersection to improve the capacity at that location as well. And then a new project that we're looking at is to install a signal at Harvard and it's Claremont?
Claremont, right down the street.
Oh yeah, that's right over here, that's right. Because what's happening is so many kids are crossing at that location that the cars have to wait and then they stop and then there's a lot of hesitation and then some of the kids are confused and they don't know whether to go or not. And so we feel that we probably will be fairly successful in getting a grant for the signalization of that intersection. Currently, right now, the cost of signalizing an intersection is anywhere between $500,000 and $600,000. So we're hoping that we can be successful in getting a state grant, which typically pays for about 75% of that cost. And then the school district is going to help us out with matching money. So it's a new thing that we just started, I believe, like 2 years ago, meeting with the school district to see if we can partner up so that we can help each other as opposed to point fingers at each other. So once again, thank you all very much. Appreciate your time. Thank you, John.
Very good. First project we're looking at tonight, jumping through here. There we go. proposed amendment to Carson Creek specific plan. And Sean McDermott's here tonight from Lennar, and he wants to present sort of a basic first view for us. This is our first chance really to look at what's proposed and what they're entertaining for a specific plan amendment. There you are. Like you were sitting down. And forward, backwards.
Thank you, John.
Watch out.
Good evening. I'm Sean McDermott with Lennar Homes. I want to thank the APAC for giving us the opportunity to come forward before you tonight and present our proposed rezoning specific plan amendment for Carson Creek. I'll start off by orienting you here towards the project site. This is the area of the proposed specific plan amendment and rezone. Generally speaking, it's located to the west of Latrobe Road, south of Carson Crossing Drive here. The northern end of the project is bounded by the El Dorado Hills Business Park and the existing Heritage El Dorado Hills community that Lennar is currently building in. What I have in front of you here is the proposed zoning compared to the existing zoning. Currently, the site is zoned for 57 acres of industrial and 33 acres of research and development. There's a 30-acre regional park that's proposed at the southern end of this particular project. And what Lennar is proposing is that the zoning would be modified to 84 acres of single-family residential homes here. And the intent is that the community would be age-restricted for residents 55 years of age and older. And there's a community center that would be proposed here, and then a small local commercial up at the northern end of the project site. A couple of proposed road connections. The main entry to the proposed project would be off of existing Investment Boulevard, and which connects up to Latrobe Road. And then there would be a proposed secondary connection at the southern end of the project, which would again connect back up to Latrobe Road there. We've done a preliminary traffic analysis of the proposed project versus the current specific plan land uses. And it appears that traffic is reduced by about 50% for the proposed project versus the current existing uses that are proposed in the industrial and office. Also with the project, there's a proposed trail that would surround the boundary on both the south and the west side of the proposed community, which you can see located here. And the intent would be that that would connect up to the existing trail system that exists today in the Heritage El Dorado Hills community that runs around the boundary of the project to provide additional regional public trail connections. This entire trail network would be open for public use. So with that, the proposed community includes 415 age-restricted homes as currently designed, community center of 3.1 acres, local commercial 1.7 acre site up here at the northern edge, open space, and then the regional park would still remain at the 30 acres that was proposed as part of the specific plan. Lennar has identified this as being a high priority area for a continuation to serve the needs of an aging baby boomer population. We've experienced great success with our Heritage El Dorado Hills community, and this would be an opportunity to extend that into a new area located directly adjacent to that project. So with that, it's just a kind of high-level overview. We've submitted a J6 application to the county, which is currently under review. We had our TAC meeting about a month ago, and we would be looking to get before the Board of Supervisors sometime within the next 60 to 90 days. With that, I'm available to answer any questions you might have.
This new development, is it adjacent to that huge company? It begins with the big broad something or other. They're probably one of the biggest employees here in El Dorado Hills. So you plan to build over here next to it?
That is correct. The Broadridge facility is located in this spot. We have reached out to representatives of Broadridge to discuss our plans with them. We've notified their facilities manager and are working on doing additional outreach with them, and they are aware of what's being proposed for that particular area.
And you're going to have all the traffic go up Investment Boulevard onto Latrobe, and that'll add significantly to the traffic going towards 50. If you were on Latrobe this evening, you would know that the traffic is horrendous. The intersections were almost blocked by traffic going towards 50.
Understood. As I mentioned, the proposed project actually generates about 50% less traffic than what the existing zoning would produce. Once we make it through the J6 application process, we would anticipate preparing and submitting a tentative map to go before the county and the Board of Supervisors ultimately for review. During that process, a detailed environmental review would need to be done at that stage. At this particular stage in the process, we're just moving forward with the J6 application to get feedback on the proposed specific plan and rezone.
So with the approved uses there now from the specific plan, with the R&D and the industrial, how many employees were there? There's like 4,000 employees? Is my remembering that was the projection? Well, if you don't have it in front of you, that's okay, but I thought when I was looking at it originally. So that's where you probably see the reduction in traffic is because there's fewer people coming and going for work and it's an age-restricted community. Is that part of the computation?
Yes, that would be part of the computation. I don't have that piece of information in front of me, but we do have access to it, so I can certainly pull that together and circulate it to you. Yes?
A couple of quick questions. So, when you're saying R&D, so it's currently zoned for research and development?
Industrial and research and development, correct.
Okay. And about how far down from where like CVS and Relish going out towards Latrobe is, I mean, it's farther, the industrial is way farther down, correct?
Yeah, it's all the way at the other end.
Okay. Like before you go up the hill?
Yeah,
up
4 miles, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can see the relationship of the project site in relationship to the freeway located up here. This is the Blackstone community, and this is the El Dorado Hills Business Park. This is the proposed project site.
North corner, some light commercial or something like that. What is that part of your guys' specific plan, or would you guys be leasing or selling that part off?
What is done with that parcel would need to be determined at a future date, but the intent is to plan for a 1.7 acre local commercial site. Lennar is a home builder and would likely not be involved in the development of any commercial property.
So would Lennar own that?
Lennar currently owns it.
Okay.
Yes?
Is this going to be considered an extension of Heritage?
That's a great question. It actually will be.
All shared?
Sure. It will actually be a standalone community. It will have its own homeowners association, its own private amenities. It will be a separate community. Lennar uses the branding Heritage for all of its age-restricted active adult communities, and so it will share that Heritage name. But currently, it's identified as Heritage Carson Creek. The existing community is Heritage El Dorado Hills. They will be two separate communities. There's no direct connection between the two, and they will all have their own suite of amenities. Yes? And
I won't expect you to answer this question.
okay.
It is something that came up when we were looking at vineyards. We have a public trail going through there. Okay. I'm a member of the public. I'm not in here. I presume this is a gated community. How do I get to it? And where do I park?
That's a fair question.
I don't expect you to answer that. I expect you to think about it.
I can answer that question.
I would be happy to take a shot at answering it. So this location here would be a public roadway, and there would be a trail connection here. You would have the ability to get on the trail in this location and travel up.
The trail is separated from the private community, so that when you're on the public trail, you don't have the ability to step into the gated community. Typically, that's done with tube steel fencing around the boundaries and pedestrian gates, so that an individual resident of that community can utilize it to get out onto the public trail, but residents members of the community that are on the public trail can't get access back into the gated community. This portion of the trail system is already existing, and this portion of the trail system has recently been installed with the improvements that are being done in Heritage El Dorado Hills Phase 2. And that is a public trail system, and it does get used by the public, but it is separated from the private portion of the community. Yes?
Just from my own education here, is the assumption that based on the square acreage, that roughly there would be 4,000 people if this stayed light industrial, and then that's how we're doing this? Like, it's all just, like, is that the calculation? Is that 50% reduction is based off an assumption that there would be?
The 50% reduction is based off of trip generation for the proposed land uses, and there are calculations that go into that. I don't have that level of detail with me here. One of the things that's looked at and that we've taken a look at on the fiscal impact analysis side is that basically when it comes down to services and often trip generation, that it's either it's person served driven. And so I can provide that information that we have in terms of the person served for the existing land use versus the person served for the residential project, and I'd be happy to make that information available.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like, how did you get the number of the person served?
So the number I referenced was from the specific plan when it was approved 100 years ago.
1992, I think.
Thank you.
It was.
So 100 years ago, last century.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the numbers that they put in. There's obviously formulas that are for traffic studies. And so I'd seen that, and I was just assuming that the reduction is because there's fewer people and there's less driving, but I'm just guessing.
And all of that information will be reviewed as part of the environmental process with the tentative map. The county will have an opportunity to review and weigh in on it, and that information will be readily available to the public.
John, the County Parks and Recreation Commission has been looking for a connection between somewhere in the Carson Creek Business Park area to the Sacramento-Placerville Transportation Corridor. Has anybody talked to you about trying to help us provide that connection? Because that SPTC is a great recreational avenue, but there's no place to park and get to it. So if we have a trail system with some parking adjacent, then people at least can access that and make use of it.
That is not something that's been raised with us yet, but it's certainly something that we can explore.
Thank you.
Good, because I'm with John talking about that. I'd like to point out something. All of these trails are very close to the railroad tracks here. And if at some point in time,
And that is the SPTC if you don't recognize
but at some point in time, if there was a connection, and there are points here where you can actually see the tracks. If there was a connection here where people could now bike and ride, even bikes or horses or whatever, that would be great. But the people who own that land refuse to give it up. And another thing I want to mention, in Four Seasons we have public trails, but the public trails are within the community, and they go through the community. This is something new, where they're building the public trails outside the community, and there are gates on one side so that you can't get in. So that's kind of it's a big change in my mind. And I noticed that because I do take a bike on your new trail. All right, so.
John?
Yes.
Assuming you get the rezoning approved, and you mentioned earlier that this has been identified for your group as a high priority item, assuming all the plans are approved, when would you expect to break ground, and how long would you expect it to build out from first home to the capacity of 400 or so?
Okay. I'll do my best to answer that. As I'm sure you can imagine, much of the timing is based on market conditions and a number of other factors. But as we sit here today, going with our J6 application in the next 60 to 90 days, we would anticipate roughly a 6-month tentative map process after that, at which point we would start improvement plans for the community and then ultimately start constructing infrastructure and then homes Most likely, you wouldn't see any homes out there for 2 years or so. And then in terms of build out, that's an even more difficult question to answer. But generally speaking, we've had a high degree of success with our existing Heritage El Dorado Hills community. One of the things that we would do is likely have 2 different product lines based on different lot sizes. And based on that, we would anticipate absorbing maybe 4 homes per product line per month. So 8 homes per month, 415. You can do the math. It takes a while before the community would be built up.
When you built your previous communities here in El Dorado Hills, have you always complied with the county rules regarding setbacks and stuff like that? Or have you asked for exemptions to those standard setback rules?
We have proposed various setbacks for various portions of our communities throughout El Dorado County. In the case this is identified here as Carson Creek Unit 3. It's our Reflections community that's currently selling. It's more of a small lot product, and it does have different setbacks than traditional county standards. But here in this proposed community, the anticipation is that the lots would be 45 to 55 feet wide, 105 feet deep. Those would have more traditional setbacks.
Okay.
Any other questions? Yes.
Is the park area that is designated there, is that within the gated aspect of the community?
No, it would be accessible to the public. It would sit outside the gates. And we're actually working with El Dorado Hills CSE to do a site visit out there to take a look at it with a couple of their board members that will be coming up, but it will be publicly accessible and not behind the gates. A similar example is there is a public park site identified here at the northern end of our Heritage El Dorado Hills community that is actually currently out to bid. That park is anticipated to start construction later this year. It's a public park, and this is a gated community. The gate lies right in about here, but there's a public access to the park that sits outside the gates, and so it would be a similar setup with the proposed connection to the community park here.
Is there, relative to that which you just raised, is there public parking adjacent to that site?
On this particular site, there is public parking on that particular park site.
Okay. Second question I have. Do you, at this point, have any idea as to the cost range for these residents or the anticipated income level of these residents?
Sure, I get asked that question a lot, and unfortunately that's one that's very difficult to predict here 2 years from when we would likely be in a position to build homes. The best that I can say is we would anticipate building similar product to what we're currently building in our Heritage El Dorado Hills communities. And if you go to lennar.com, you can see what those homes are currently selling for. That's just a snapshot in time. And so we typically don't set pricing until the homes are ready to be released for sale. So it's hard to say at this point.
So if I visit that website, what price would I see?
Oh, sure. That's a fair question. They're currently in the mid 500s to about mid 650 for a base price currently.
I have a question about the park that you're talking about up at the north corner. In my observations, 3/4 of it is swampland that I don't know what you can do with it. I can't even see how you could even turn that into a park. And we were hoping that the CSD this evening might give us some information about what they plan to build in that park. I can't see how you can actually use 3/4 of that land. So, I don't know.
Is it wetlands?
It's wetlands, yeah?
John, I'll address that. I'm one of the 2 board members that will be touring that facility, or at least that 30-acre parcel. So we've got that plan coming up. I'm a priest, by the way. I sit on the board with CSD. So we don't have a plan, frankly. So this is something that's been out there and existing for 15 years as a potential park site. It does have a lot of wetlands issues. There's a lot of restrictions likely for us that we've recognized for years as this is a future park site. So we have no conceptual plan, we have nothing on paper, we don't have any general concept right now. So we're gonna go take a look at it, and we're gonna start working with the developer. It may be a Quimby thing, it may be something we just take financial resources for and not develop it. It may be something we can develop pieces and parcels of, we're not sure. But we've got a much bigger plan, as you know, with our master plan that involves 10 other park sites. So we've got a lot of different priorities going on right now, and this is just one of those.
I would ask you at some point in time, because all of this land is adjacent to senior communities, that you get the people from Heritage involved and also the people from Four Seasons involved in what you intend to put in this park, which is going to be, the part that I can see that you can use is going to be very small. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, John. And if you're involved at all with what we've got in Valley View and the other park concepts in Bass Lake as well, it's all about stakeholder input, and that's, to your point, that's,
Thank you.
we're stepping up our game on that.
And we do have some ideas associated with that particular regional park, but as Alan said, we're in the early stages of discussion with the park district, but there will be more to follow as those discussions continue.
One more question here.
Yes.
I first want to state that I'm in agreement that we need to rezone that property out there, because we all know that the business park, there's not a lot of growth that's going on currently. You know, it'd probably take 100 years for that acreage right there to be developed. But with that said, I still am concerned about the impacts at Highway 50 there and Eldorado Hills Boulevard and Latrobe, with adding that many more residents in such a quick order. I mean, you're talking about 10 years, not 100 years, by which you said there was a 50% reduction. So what offsites are you guys looking to do? What development agreement, John, is being put in place here to make sure we don't have, you know, a Silver Valley interchange?
This is a specific plan amendment, so it's a little bit different than a brand new project. So,
okay,
it's a different category.
Well, but it's a specific plan amendment, but it also, you still can go into a new development agreement to help address some of these issues.
You can if the developer is interested in doing that. So I'm not sure that that's been proposed. I haven't heard of it, but that's a possibility.
Well, but I mean, can't the county have certain requirements in order to get the rezone to ask for offsite?
That's what the J6 review is basically all about. It's a pre-application review, and it's a new policy, not new by, I think it goes back 5 years or something, where the county recognized for any major changes, whether it's a general plan amendment, specific plan amendment, a major rezone, that the proponent needs to come before the Board of Supervisors and explain the conceptual concept, the conceptual things they're proposing, the rezone, to change it to single-family residential, age-restricted. These are the things, the amenities, the stuff that Sean just went through.
Right.
And based upon that, which also public input is allowed at that point. And I don't know if the date's been set yet. I think it's...
It is not yet been set.
Okay. I know you've been working with Mel and the planning department to get those pre-app dates set. But when that's agendized, the public is welcome to come and listen to that discussion. And there's always a public comment period, three minutes per person, 5 minutes per organization. But it allows the Board of Supervisors to get a better feel for what are the impacts for those proposed changes. And we look at it from a regional perspective, not just a little tiny piece of the community. So clearly traffic flow is always one of those things. And Raphael was here, but the thing I think that we have not done a good job for is allowing for the growth in terms of planning for right-of-way on streets like Latrobe Road. We have an issue on White Rock Road, we have an issue on Latrobe Road. When these specific plans were approved, there was no right-of-way provisions to allow us to expand to enough width to keep the traffic flow down. And to reasonable levels. Even from the point of White Rock Road was originally planned for 6 lanes in that section between the county line and all the way up to where Latrobe, Eldorado Boulevard intersects. The DOT at that time decided they only needed 4 lanes, so it cut back from what the developer had proposed. So we're seeing all those impacts now many years later, that there just isn't enough capacity on some of these roadways, and it becomes expensive to expand them. But, you know, step by step, we're trying to work through those and find solutions, you know, with the developer's help, with the use of TIM fees. But cost of construction for new asphalt is huge.
And you're saying it's because it's specific to our that's why, okay.
Well, and they can propose a development agreement or something that comes to me. I mean, the county could propose it too, but we have to get through the pre-application phase, I think, before we get a general understanding of what the specifics are for that concept, right? I mean, the elements of the concept. I can't say specific design, but the elements of the concept, and then weigh all that.
Steve, this will be the last one we're gonna get.
Yes, just real quick. I know that you folks provide an amazing amount of recreational facility within your projects. I've been out there, I'm in the real estate industry, and we've seen it, we've sold them, all that kind of stuff. There's a couple of issues here that I think we all need to take a look at. Is one, why do we need a park? Because the people already have a place to go when they're living there, so who's going to come across from Broadstone who also has a place to go? So why is this park being built when in the same time we're talking about building Iron Horse High School and the possibility of building an athletic pavilion over there? I mean, this just really makes this something where the CSD has to come out and spend money. The CSD has plenty of places to spend money without this ever happening. Secondarily to the roads, these people have to be 55 and over to live in this place, right? Mm-hmm. We're looking at it, we're 76, 75 years old, my wife, and we're not going to be commuting. How many people in your entire 1,060 units you have in your...
1,056, but very close.
But the point is, how many of them commute? 3? I mean, it's really, there's no commuting going on from that project, or darn little. And there are some people who might work from home, because most of us have gotten fairly good with the computer. But my point is that the CSD shouldn't be going out there to spend money. Period. The one thing that we like, and I'm talking about seniors, we like to walk. I walk 5 miles a day. And so when I see the trails out there, I want to walk the trails. I want the trails in place. But the rest of it, parks and setting aside and having you guys spend the money is nuts. Just want to make that point. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. The only thing I would add is kind of an anecdotal response to that, is I happen to serve on the Homeowners Association board for Heritage El Dorado Hills, and we do have this public park located here outside of the gates that is about to start construction, and the residents are very excited about additional public amenities being brought on. Now, the amenities that we offer behind the gates will likely be used more often by those residents, but there is an appeal of a public park that provides additional amenities even in an age-restricted community.
And I might add, 3 years from now, when you're mowing and blowing, getting the place cleaned up constantly, and you don't see much use of it, and that's where the CSD has to look at where their money's going to go. It's got to go to places where people really use it, and I'm not sure that park would be a wonderful place to use when you got so much other attraction in there to bring people to it.
Okay, thank you for the comment.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we're looking at the clock, the hour's getting late. We might skip a couple things here and get to the end. We will go over this real quick. This is the Superior Self-Storage revision. It's the first look for us at this. And this is VPD, if you remember the name of the business that was in here. This is in Town Center West. Here's Town Center Boulevard and Latrobe right here. The freeways over here. So this building's been vacant for a while. We're proposing to reuse this building. We want to convert it to an indoor superior self-storage facility. There's a couple phases to this. The first phase would be building the interior parts of the self-storage, and those aren't structural. They're just walls they throw up. And then the second phase would be adding right here in this L shape right here, another 20,000 square foot add-on. So, and that's the phasing right here. It's about 89,000 total square feet right now, 592 storage units. They're ranging from 5 by 5 to 17 by 40, and then they'll repaint the building at the same time and add a lot of new landscaping is what they're offering right now. Jump. And so right now the building in its current configuration doesn't have that new addition right here, and this is the 500 spaces, and then they're going to build another 20,000 square feet out here to add 201 storage units, 5 by 5 to 10 by 30, and that would probably happen a year after they get approvals on this, if they get it. This is the existing site right now. Blue Shield's over in here, This is Town Center East, there's McDonald's, Big O Tires. There will be no access from Latrobe, there'll be no access from White Rock Road, the only access will be from the existing driveway on Town Center Boulevard. So access will be by a controlled gate, and they'll keep digital records of who enters, who leaves. And this is, right now, it's a proposed reuse, and they anticipate that this project will be moving forward pretty soon. They need to get approvals. So we just wanted to put it in front of you. So we will skip Locking Auto real quick. The only reason we had it on is because we've been talking recently about the Vineyard project, which would be, this is the Diamante Estates, the old name. But we just did the draft environmental impact report on that. So the road that's going to go into the Vineyard project right here is an extension of Mountain Dixon cutoff from Green Valley. This is why we wanted to put it up here tonight. It's that it would extend into these two other projects, the Alto project and Locking Auto. These have both been approved in the past. And this was just a large lot measure so they could finance the project. So we just want to let residents know that that was happening. This is an overall look at it of how some of the lots are proposed. So we got through all that. We will skip this one tonight. This was an interesting conversation here. It's basically about how the regional needs, the regional housing needs assessment is done where it determines, how much housing of certain income types we need to provide in the county, and it's a state, it's mandated by the state. And SACOG came to the county, to the board, and made a presentation basically to demonstrate what their methodology is going to be in this version. It's the 2021 to 29. They do it every 8 years. Right now we're in compliance, and at the end of this process, which will meet all these different housing needs from very low and lower, which is the critical need for the state right now. And what the state's really looking at, and there's municipalities being sued because they're not meeting their obligation in terms of how they zone. The one thing that was important about this is that the county can't build a house, obviously. It's the market. So this defines, the need. The county needs to make it part of the general plan that we have these areas zoned for this type of housing. If it ever gets built, that's great, but if it doesn't get built, then, as long as it's on paper, we don't get in trouble as a county. Which, if they're already suing municipalities, there's a potential for that in the future. So we just want to present that real quick tonight. And this is sort of the timeline. By October, they'll be accepting the methodology. We'll be hearing soon after that about what the actual numbers would probably look like. And I know, and we can have a discussion about that later. There's some question about the actual accuracy of these projections. Historically, they've been way off. We've been way over on what the defined need is versus what the real need is. So we can have a discussion about it. Do you have something real quick about it?
Yeah, real quick. I hope so.
Real quick.
This is the only reason I came here tonight, or really was to try to listen to this and get an update. Back on the last slide, RHNA, it has lower income 30 units per acre. This is from the state?
That's SACOG.
Okay, because I know ours is
24, yeah.
Right. And obviously, one of the biggest things we need to do here is increase the density on multifamily zone property to that state allowed 30. And, I was hoping to hear some kind of an update from.
Yeah, we were really just doing this as kind of a high level look at what was presented. It'd be interesting. It's probably about a half hour worth of video, the full conversation, and then there was some general plan conversation after that, another agenda meeting. But when you listen to it, you're right. State talk is kind of like here, but the thing that was defined rather clearly in that conversation was that we're a rather rural environment. We don't meet some of these metropolitan area standards. There's not a lot of need for, but there are needs. There's a lot of low income and very low income needs that we don't have we have the zoning for, but we don't have the capacity to meet the real need right now, I would say. But on paper, we're legal.
And Doug, don't forget why the county standard is 24 residential units per acre, as was done with Town Center. If you want to apply, someone wants to apply for general plan amendment to raise that up for the lot beyond 24, like they did with the apartments up to almost 48, then it's a process that a developer could try to go through and get it through planning, department planning commission, and then up to the board of supervisors if they thought it was worthwhile to do so.
Yeah, but unless you
It's expensive.
That's for
Yes.
the,
Yeah, it is, yes.
yeah, it's very expensive. That's for the big time developers. You have smaller developers that own, land that's, a half acre, quarter acre, that could be a duplex, a fourplex, or something like that. And, you can't make it pencil. It just doesn't pencil in this county, not even Cameron Park. And so the only way to really help, if we're not reducing tip fees and a lot of the other impact fees that every agency charges around here to buy in, you've got to increase density. It's the only way for us to build homes, small condos for our kids, when they grow up.
There was another interesting conversation several months ago when the CSD was talking about their impact fees, and they're raising that impact fee for recreation. The CSD volunteered actually that if it is a low or very low income project, that they would waive their fees. So I mean, it takes things like that, but you're right, there are enormous fees, and it's piecemeal, back from every angle. So we just wanted to let people know that this planning process is going on right now. It's significant. If we don't meet that need, then obviously right now they're suing. I can't remember, is it Long Beach? It's happening, and that's a case of where they're saying on paper they're not doing what they said they were going to do, let alone building. So fair point for that. We will jump ahead though, because we talked about this last month. We talked about it a little bit the month before for Costco. And we'll start our conversation with this we don't know. We still don't know. We don't know what the plan is. We don't know if they're still committed to doing it. It's a letter of intent between the developer that owns the land and Costco. We're not advocating for or against. We just want to see the plan so we know what we're talking about, what the impacts are, and where, if it makes sense or if it doesn't make sense. So we'll go real quick through this because what we did want to talk about tonight was the process if they decide to go forward. So last month we talked about, and this is the site, it's at Silva Valley Parkway, the intersection or the interchange with Highway 50. Up here at the top, that would be Oak Meadow Elementary School. They're proposing to put the warehouse on the east and north side of Silva Valley, and their fueling station would be over here on the west side. And the idea with that was that it would get this function, which is the noisiest, away from the most neighbors, most residential area, and away from the school. It would also make circulation in their warehouse parking lot a lot better. So we'll jump through, let's highlight, because our hour is getting late, I'm sure there's a lot of questions. We'll highlight sort of the fact sheet that the county put out, but this is a closer look at the actual area. So it is, as we said, it was rezoned in 2012 for big box essentially. And then what happened was when Silva Valley Parkway was extended to the interchange, it's the old Silva Valley, it bisected their original parcel. It's all one area, so they made an accommodation since they volunteered a lot of money to build the interchange, but they also were allowed to divide that parcel up and make it into two different areas essentially. It's still proposed as one project. So the fact sheet came out. We have it on the APAC website if you want to look at it. The county has it on the website as well, and I believe there's a link on Supervisor Heidel's website. But it's real quick. We'll go through it. So they're considering it, and the reason they're considering it is that because the warehouse in Folsom is over impacted. And when they look at the, Costco's a membership store, so when they look at their members, they know everything about, what dog food you bought and how often you buy it and where you live. So they've identified that there's a big portion of that usage for Folsom is in El Dorado County, primarily in El Dorado Hills. So the decision's not final. They're still working for the internal process to say whether or not they're going to do it. If they do it, how long would it take? Well, they're suggesting about 2 years to get approvals through the county for the environmental and everything else. And then if it is approved, it would take them about a year to build the warehouse. So about 3 years, if nothing is stopped or delayed it. So why are they building it? As I said, because the Folsom store is impacted and they're concerned that the members from El Dorado County and from Folsom are not being served well. And it is a membership warehouse and they're all about serving their membership. So Folsom Ranch will also be built out. It's another 11,000 homes, so they envision the impact is pretty significant down there. But even without Folsom Ranch, just looking at El Dorado County numbers and the members they have now, they can justify a store here now if they don't get any members. And that's what they've said, that's what they related at the stakeholder meetings. The other reason is that they were looking at, they want to have freeway access. Silver Valley Parkway right now is the only A-rated interchange in the entire county. And we had talked about, we had asked at the stakeholder meeting, well, why not Missouri Flat and Placerville? Well, Placerville has 10,000 people. We have about 44, and most of the members are here. Also in Placerville, those intersections are so impacted right now, even with the improvements that are planned and online, they still can't accommodate this project. So that's what they've talked about consistently, is that their members are already here, and their members are close to the county line, and they're not further east. There are other intersections like Cambridge Road or Cameron Park Drive or even Ponderosa Road that just, you know, Cameron Park Drive, right now they've been looking at improving that intersection, or that interchange. It's 10 years out and it's $70 million now. In 10 years, it will probably be $100 million or 90. So Costco's not interested in building an interchange, but they are interested in mitigating their impacts in an existing interchange. So let's try to jump through this fast and we'll, okay, so about 150,000 square feet, about 800 parking spaces, all on that east side. How many jobs? About 200 to 250, half of them be part-time, minimum of 24 hours a week. They have, their salaries start out at $15 an hour. They top out at $28, $25, that's for a meat cutter. Their average US wage is $23 an hour. They offer a lot of benefits: medical, dental, vision, pharmacy, mental health, life insurance, a whole gamut of benefits for their full-time employees. Their part-time employees also get the full, the core medical, dental, and vacation benefits after 6 months, and that's for a 24-hour-a-week employee. That's not too bad for a part-time employee. And they also would be looking at hiring pretty locally, although there would be existing members that would probably be in with experience to help run the store when it opens. So for noise, light, traffic, pollution, what are they going to do? Well, they're suggesting that the entrance and the parking and delivery base will all face out into the interchange in the Silver Valley Parkway, and that's the best way they know to get the noise away from residents that are behind them. The back of the warehouse is going to be identified as a buffer zone where they're not going to have any traffic behind it. And the deliveries are controlled. The full load comes in on one tractor trailer, they drop it, and then they pick up and empty and leave. And they have very defined times for how they unload and when they unload. The other thing they wanted us to know in the stakeholder meeting was that the lights in the parking lot go off an hour after the building closes. Oops. So the traffic on Silver Valley, as Raphael suggested, there's going to have to be a traffic study. And they've said in the fact sheet, we're talking about Silver Valley Parkway, Country Club Drive, Clarksville Crossing, which is the old Silver Valley, White Rock Road, other areas around. I sat behind a few of the lawyers for the project that are working with it, and they suggested, in their whispers between them, that they were looking all the way to Greenbrier Road and all the way down to White Rock and Latrobe. That's their first look, is what they're suggesting internally among themselves. Whether the law here to do that, but the county defines where the traffic study has to be done.
In fact, remember at the community council meeting last Monday, Raphael did say his department does a 5-mile. So that will go to Green Valley, it will go down to White Rock and Latrobe and beyond.
So it may impact what you're talking about.
So it's a regional traffic analysis,
Yes.
what it is, as opposed to project specific.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So, and then the school is a key concern. A lot of people are looking at that, and we've talked about it before at community council meetings, where Raphael mentioned it tonight. The county doesn't pick where the schools go. Even in a city like in Sacramento, where they have a wonderful problem with their schools right now, they don't pick where the schools go. The state decides where the schools go. The school district proposes a site and the state approves it. So this is approved next to a freeway off-ramp in the 80s, essentially, early 90s. But Costco has said that, they open at 10 on weekends, or on weekdays, so there won't be that, the warehouse part won't be an impact on the school, but I saw it initially and thought, well, I remember driving by Costco in Folsom getting gas at 6 in the morning. I think they've said 7 for up here. So there's a potential. And when you look at a fuel station off of a freeway off-ramp, well, you think, well, gosh, everybody's going to go there. Well, you got to be a member to get the gas there. So it will be a little limited for the Costco part of the project. So, but that's what they've suggested is the way that they're mitigating against the school impact. There will be more to study on that. When we asked them, well, where do you have Costco's that are this close together? They said, we have a bunch. Well, they didn't say where. So we went through and we looked. So I've got a couple sheets here real quick that I just went through and looked, and I think this one's from their website. In Fresno and Clovis, the metropolis of Clovis, they have 3 locations all within 5 or 6 miles of each other, of another store. In, oops, I went too far. In San Jose and Santa Clara, they have 5 locations within 3 to 5 miles of another location. In Bakersfield, where the high-speed rail will be going, they have 2 stores within 5 miles of each other. In Los Angeles, right, I tried to avoid 9 locations just in this one we could squeeze in here, within 3 to 6 miles of another location. You know, these densities are much different than here, but they're accurate. They said they have them. We looked at San Diego. They have 8 locations, 2 of them within 2.8 miles of each other, which is what would be here, if it happens. 3 within 4 to 6 miles and 2 within 6 to 7 miles. But again, the density is a lot different. But when we talk to them,
did you research to see if they were put in residential neighborhoods or not?
yeah, I'll show you some of them are. Some of them are rather retail or commercial, and a couple were almost industrial. They border. So, but a lot of these, you know, they've been developing these for many years. So the way they did it, you know, 15 or 20 years ago is different from the way they're doing it now. But we need the information before we can start asking intelligent questions. Let me jump real quick to, this is in Elk Grove, and they just opened this, I want to say it was this year. Their civic center and their city hall is right here in this area down here. They built it in this middle area of this empty, the satellite maps don't have it yet. But it is bounded by residential on at least 2 sides. We don't have time to go through all that tonight, but it's a lot to read. When you read, they made a lot of accommodations in Elk Grove, but it took them a long time to do it. It's the same process, 2 to 3 years. And there's a question right here, and I'll jump back to next.
I actually drove all the way around the Elk Grove store yesterday. I'll be impacted right over my back fence is where the proposed area is. There's residential on one side of that street, and it's behind it. Yeah. There's a buffer behind and landscaping. And
it looks like
what have you.
That was the drawing they did it.
Yeah. The other question, or just comment and listening is we've talked about schools several times, and that the state just puts schools willy-nilly wherever. The schools are put where residential neighborhoods are.
Yes.
We don't go build a school in the middle of a commercial area. Schools are built as communities and residential areas expand around them.
Well, an example of that though is
the commercial is coming in after the fact. So
that's true. The other part about the schools is that if you look at the school at Union Mine, who, you know, I know I have a lot of friends that live South County or up towards Pottsville, and their kids are there, and it's a good school. They feel they're getting quality education for their kids there. That school's in an odd location because residential there are large lots. They're very large lots. So, you know, the road there is, you know, Highway 49, and so how you mitigate with that? Now you got to look at the state to help you with part of that because, you know, it is a state highway. And so, but yeah, when they pick the school sites, you're right, it's built where residential is planned. But when, like Raphael mentioned, you know, willy-nilly, it's because the county isn't getting any input on the road, the traffic impacts. They basically get an easement is what they provide for the school to get a driveway in and onto a road.
There are exceptions like Union Mine High School.
Yeah.
It'd be great to have another high school in Dorado Hills, but that's not in the plan, right?
Well, the funny thing about Union Mine High School is they own the property for 20 years. They have the plans.
Is there residential all around it?
It's
and I coach high school basketball, and I've been to every darn high school in Northern California at some point. I think that is a very unique environment.
Yeah.
In a very wide.
Well, they got approved for that
area, much as Pondo is. It's not.
Yeah, and I have a daughter in Pondo in Pondo. Yeah. So yeah, it's different, right? It's not a one size fits all. Like we're talking about.
I'd like to mention something before we get to your question. I think it's very unusual here that you have 4 schools on one street, okay? and all those schools let out at the same time. The Board of Education does not provide buses because they feel that they're too expensive. So you have hundreds of parents at the same time picking up or leaving children off. And this is, I think
Kids don't walk to and from school anymore.
You know,
And
and
bike paths are all loaded with cars parked day and night practically.
I heard the bike paths were too narrow, but
What does that have to do with this conversation?
It has a lot to do with the conversation because when you look at the concept that there's only a class exchange, that's only one half of that side of Costco. If I'm at Costco, yes, that's lovely, it's A exchange. This all here backs up not just to Oak Meadow, it backs 4 more schools back. That's what we're saying. Now you're going to close Entrada and everybody's going to also extra exit out that way.
I totally agree with you. I'm just trying to figure out what this guy's point is. What's the point? On the fact that there's 4 schools on Silver Valley Park.
There are potential impacts for traffic to the schools and residents.
Right. So I guess that leads to the next question is, you've talked about all the reasons why there should be something there at that interchange, specifically at Costco.
Oh.
I haven't heard anything about if there's any concerns why there shouldn't be a Costco there.
Well, and that's the question. So we don't have to plan and we don't know what's proposed. So what we're doing right now is letting people know what is proposed, and then we're going to talk about the process of if they elect to go forward, what is the opportunity for the public to have input to this? To say, hey, this makes no sense, or hey, this makes sense if you could change this, or this is wonderful. You know, it's everybody's opinion.
Well, based on what you know now, are there concerns?
I say there's traffic concerns, mostly.
Okay.
That's my major
Wait,
concern.
there's thousands of concerns.
But there are other concerns. The thing that hits me right away, like they were saying, is that the traffic right there is a concern for me. They're saying, it's a Class A intersection right now, but Silver Valley Parkway going out towards the schools, if you drive through there in the morning at drop-off times,
I live there, yes.
often then you live it, yeah. Did I miss something? I'll come back to you. I'll jump over here.
So I kind of live in the area, and obviously traffic is my #1 concern, but also crime. I mean, especially with the schools really close by. I live very close to the library, and I see beer bottles, alcoholic beverages. You've got lights going off at a certain time. You're close to an exit, a freeway exit, and I'm very concerned, especially with kids really close by. It's just a stone's throw away. And I've got other concerns too, but like crime and traffic are definitely high on my list.
Yeah, and that's why, like I have kids, they're at Ponderosa High School now, and there's really nothing, they don't go off campus for lunch. I mean, because there's really nothing that they can get to. But this is something that's close by, and I had heard, some people say, well, if you make it walkable, I don't know how walkable you can make an extra freeway. But there are a lot of questions like that if you didn't have kids, you wouldn't think of that. Or if you have kids, you wouldn't think of some other things. But we need all those questions to come in because it has to be part of the process. Because if you don't ask it, or somebody thinks of it and they don't ask it, it's not going to get answered. And I was going to come back to real quick.
The other thing that was mentioned was Costco wants to have a Class A interchange. They need to have good freeway access. Yet at the same time, we've got our customer base in El Dorado County, most of which is already right here in El Dorado Hills. That again is saying the traffic's not all coming off the freeway. Our current customers that are going to Folsom are going to be on Silva Valley and on White Rock coming from Blackstone, which is a 2-lane road.
And coming from Folsom probably, to be honest, in the future.
And Folsom Ranch if White Rock comes through.
But that was another conversation too, is that Costco also said, people heading up to Lake Tahoe, pulling their RV and pulling a boat, they're going to stop and get gas, or they're going to load up groceries because it's right there, it's right up the freeway. So that's what they're looking at, but we're looking at, internal circulation has got to be part of that. I mean, it's going to be an impact. And then,
so a lot of us live right in that neighborhood on Village Green, right behind where they're talking about putting Costco. So I think a lot of us know the concerns. We have kids, I don't want someone who's running out of toilet paper in large quantities to be like running over kids because it's going to run out or whatever the case might be.
Yeah.
It's one of the questions that I have to, you as, the supervisor, what is we have 40,000 members here in town.
Well, the area, it's not all over the hills. They say the target area.
The majority is here in the
You're right.
So if we have that much leverage, Costco is coming here to serve us. So what is our recourse? Because I know you're saying it's not here yet. We know they're planning on going through with it. Well, what if we don't want them to go through with it? What is our options to have it maybe placed somewhere else in town, or not do it at all? You know, buy the property, whatever the case may be. But what are the options? I mean, is it that once Costco says we'd like to go through with this, then we only have options to say, well, we'd like more trees over here, or we, want to reduce the hours, or whatever the case might be. Because one of the things that I've been looking up is there's a parcel right behind CVS that is still in the business district that I feel like would be far enough away from some of the folks down Latrobe, and some of the residents over there, because I do care they are still my neighbors. Be far enough away from Serrano, far enough away from Blackstone, and with the possible JPA, with the Latrobe exit, and with Silva Valley, now you have 3 opportunities for people to get to Costco. That's better for Costco.
That's a fair question to ask. And I think that the response always is that they want the freeway too. And so right now, Dorado Hills Boulevard, with all the improvements we've had over the last 15 years, is still a pretty heavily impacted intersection. Physically, it's constrained by what's built around it. So at that point, you're looking at, well, if you want to improve it, how do you improve it? I don't know how you improve it.
But I just mean, what are the options? What are the options for us to say, no, we actually don't want it here?
You can say that.
John, isn't that the way to what your next slide will show?
We'll
What is the process?
I'll wait on it.
The process is long and complicated, but it does.
CEQA is the middle of it.
Yeah.
It's a big lengthy process.
Yeah, but it's, as they said, it's at least 2 years, and that's assuming there's no lawsuits that go involved. It's complicated. You have to, it provides public input and information, and I think, John, the slides you showed me a couple days ago, I think this answers those questions.
We'll run through what the process is and where the opportunity is for people to jump in. Real quick?
Yeah, just a quick question. So if somebody from Costco were to come up to you guys on the committee and said, oh, well, so we want to build there, and based on the way the current plan is, what do you guys think? Do you support it or not? What would you say?
I would need to see the plan. And keep in mind also, we're an advisory committee. What we say, maybe some influence, but really, I can tell you in the 2 or 3 years that I've been part of the committee, a voting member, pretty much everything we voted against was approved.
Right, but
so,
a citizen, an individual citizen versus a committee, I got to believe the committee has a little more pull
historically,
than an individual citizen.
and most of APAC's influence has been on making projects, making accommodations to make them better. But I won't look over it. The decision makers make the decisions. And that's where our public comments, if we funnel them through APAC, we funnel them directly to the planning commission, to each supervisor, that's probably where the impact is. But yes, we will evaluate it. And it's very conceivable that out of 9 voting members, 5 members hate it and 4 members love it. And so we'll issue a report saying 5 members hate it and 4 members love it. And this is, our recommendation is that we hate it. But here's also sort of like the Supreme Court does when, here's the majority decision, here's the minority decision.
Okay, thank you.
Back there.
Sorry, back here.
We'll go real quick and then we'll go back.
So my question is just I thought it might be in the FAQs, but this is the thing I just wanted to understand a little bit better, and that is the tax revenue, potential tax revenue. What is the anticipated tax revenue, and how can that impact our community? Is that something that can be? Is there any control we'd have over that, and how would that work?
It wasn't revealed to us in the stakeholder meetings what the actual number is. I think the county has a guesstimate, and that's based off of, is it 1.25? What do we get out of a sales tax? Is it 1.25 in the county? So if you go and look at sort of the standard Costco revenue generations per location, that'll probably give you a baseline, and then 1.25% of what's taxable.
Is there any analysis on how much of that stays in El Dorado Hills, or is it just go up the hill? Or
you would have to. You'd have to talk to the decision makers.
Okay.
But yeah,
I'm scared that, that's important.
So on that front, on the tax revenue front, being a CPA, I know a little bit about that, but I'm not a tax guy. So first of all, everything that Costco sells is not taxable.
Exactly.
For example, food is not. So that's probably, I don't know, I would guess over 70% of what they sell. And then
I think gas is the highest.
so that's not going to be taxable. And then gas taxes a lot of those go to the whole state, not just the community. So you're now going to be able to figure out what the impact is. And then the impairments, all the home values in Serrano are going to be reducing tax revenue as well, which will probably offset all of the tax revenue from Costco. I mean, anyone that is looking at a Costco, their house is going to be worth $100,000 less, for sure. Who's going to go buy a house next to a Costco? The answer is run with nobody, because nobody bought next to a Costco already. So that is something, I mean, if the second round breaks, I'll be go getting a tax assessment in my house. So that'll be less money that they get. So think about that when you think about tax revenue, because that is often the biggest way.
So, that's true, but the thing is, we need that information, and we need people saying that, and not just us saying it. So it needs to be part of the conversation. Those comments have to go in for when they're deciding, yeah, we can approve this project, or no, we can't approve this project, or we can maybe accommodate. But that has to be part of it. The more people saying it, the more it's heard. So we can say it, but the community needs to say it too. And if it's your house, you definitely need to say it. And real quick, I skipped like 10 times.
I think it's more than just Folsom Ranch residents that are going to be coming out there. If you look at where the dam is, it's more likely those people will come up Green Valley, El Dorado Hills, left on Harbor, past 4 schools at 50 miles an hour roughly, rather than go all the way down to Bidwell. So that's something else, and 5 Mile radius probably covers that. And I think our supervisor a couple months ago said, if you are concerned, just don't go on social media. Do something. Go to the county, the supervisors. Just don't go on social media and say, I don't want this, and gee, I expressed my opinion there. But one of the other things I want to ask about, they probably haven't done it yet, but I think at one point someone said there's a 35-foot difference between Silva and Serrano, but a Costco building is typically 25 to 30 feet tall. So unless they're sitting it down, it's going to stand out like a monument as you're driving up 50. You'll be able to see which Costco wants, but Costco may be taller than the Serrano home, so that's something else we have to think about.
We were at 2 different stakeholder meetings. I know they're talking about excavating and dropping it down.
They're talking about excavating and dropping it down.
But it's still a 30-foot building.
It's still a 35-foot building, and I asked for Village Green, the lower part of Village Green that's closer to Silva Valley, and the Costco representative who's leading the project, he told me that he believed that the top of the Costco roof would be about, I think it was 5 or 6 feet above the lowest part of the ground level of the Village Greens homes that are at the lowest site, because it does slope up, I think about 15 or 18 feet. So the people at the higher end, they will be looking over the roof. The people at the lower end will probably be looking right on at the roof or a little bit below.
Yeah.
Why not just put it right down at the street?
I believe that's a traffic issue, and they need the parking lot.
Put the parking lot behind.
But then you want lighting against the residents' side.
I think they'd rather have lighting instead of wall.
So, I'm not going to hear it. And we're already over time.
Just one more question.
Yes.
You said that the best thing to do is to speak to the supervisor, and you're here in the room. How did we get to this point? I should back that up. You're saying we have no control of that, but now we know that the community is not going for this. You're a supervisor. We're going to show that we're disinterested. It's the same thing when we did E or whatever to keep the building off the golf course. Is that something that? How do we help? Back to what Alex was saying. The community does not want it. You're the representative for us that we voted you in. Do you negotiate at this level, or do you support Harvard?
You raise your concerns, your issues at every level of the public review process. That starts with the notice of preparation of the EIR. You're going to get a draft EIR which will come out with, okay, these are defined impacts. There'll be a traffic analysis, there'll be a noise analysis, there'll be an elevation analysis that shows you the views from different perspectives, artist renderings essentially. There's going to be a number of different documents, and that draft EIR is probably going to be 6 to 8 inches thick.
Yeah.
With all of the recognized potential impacts and then the mitigations. And the mitigations are the important part is, are they really addressing the impacts, number one. Number two is, are those traffic analysis and stuff realistic? Because we have seen a lot of traffic analysis from the past that I don't believe were realistic compared to what's going to happen. But I'll tell you today, with our new leadership in the Department of Transportation, Raphael is a traffic engineer. He can do a separate napkin analysis almost and say, this makes sense, or no, there's something wrong with this, and then challenge it. So he is going to be an integral part of reviewing all those traffic plans, traffic analysis, commenting on it. There's been a major concern with where the lighted intersections are. Costco wants a light right at the entrance to where this warehouse store will be. There's a lot of concern that if you do that, you're going to cause a lot of congestion in the traffic coming off of Highway 50, etc. He's got to look at that stacking distance and see if that's allowable. It may have to be a right in, right out only for that entrance, which means Country Club would become the major entrance then. The lower part of Country Club would access the Costco. So there's a lot of things involved in these steps, but get involved with APAC, follow the process. Every time there's a public review, show up and demonstrate, the issues that you have, and bring evidence. Bring examples of where communities have suffered significant impact. For instance, in Elk Grove, that is the last Costco they built in this area. It's in the area where the town hall, I guess it's city center.
The civic center, yeah.
Elk Grove, and then also there is a residential community adjacent to it. But look at those kinds of aspects and what were the drops in real estate values. That's the kind of factual data that needs to be presented. Then the board can review it. But I need to remind everybody, and Steve is well aware of this, I'm 1 vote of 5 at the supervisor's level. I opposed the Saratoga retail project because I didn't believe that small lot was acceptable to put a Chick-fil-A in there. I'd love to have a Chick-fil-A in El Dorado Hills, but it's not the right location. So I voted against it. The other 4 supervisors voted for it. It was approved. There was a threat of a lawsuit, and the net result was the landowner, the developer, decided he was not going to go against the lawsuit, so he got into a negotiation to come up with a plan that's acceptable to local residents and try to move forward with it. That hasn't come out yet in terms of what it is, but that's the process we went through. We have to remember, it only takes 3 votes at the Board of Supervisors to approve a project in El Dorado Hills. One of them lives in South Shore Lake Tahoe.
Just 4 of the 5 don't.
One of them lives in Shingle Springs, one of them lives in Cameron Park, and the other one lives just outside of Placerville. Placerville really wanted this Costco, and they had been working on it to try to get Costco to come up there for probably 6 to 8 years. And Costco's answer had been to that point, we'll consider it, and then they really started looking at it, and it didn't pencil for them. A population of 10,000 people, and the freeway access off of Missouri Flat Road, which is where they wanted to put it, just wasn't going to work for them. And the site that they had identified was probably a mile off the highway. Costco said, no thank you, we're not interested. They are interested in this. That doesn't mean they get it. It means they have to go through the process steps, but ultimately it comes down to a vote of 5 people. So I've always taken the position to get the best possible project you can out of the process, because if you don't, you may regret the fact that you didn't fight to get the best project, because it can be approved. Even though I'm not personally in favor, it can still be approved.
So we need to go real quick because we're already 10 minutes over. Let's go 1, 2, 3.
Okay, one last comment. Keep in mind, something's going to get built there, and Costco might be the best of bad choices. Just looking at that drawing, it seems like trying to be accommodating, where I'm sure Walmart would be, they probably have loading docks on the back. So I think you're talking about responsible, make sure it's done right, whatever it is.
And there's more to this project than just the Costco side. There's the west side too. Yeah. One more in the back right here, and we're going to jump over here. Did you have one?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that Costco is probably the worst imaginable thing to go to. I would like just to think of something that could generate more cars than a Costco in that amount of space. There isn't anything. I would bet that there's probably 5,000 to 10,000 cars a day at a Costco. And isn't there a rule that if there's going to be a level of service F, you can't put it? I mean, I'll bet my life that there'll be level of service F if they put a Costco there. That is a no-brainer. So just think about that. Like Walmart, fine, it'd be half as many people. What's the difference? There's nothing worse.
Yeah, I just want to direct her back over here, Don. And that is, to me, it seemed like, yeah, you made a statement that you're just 1 in 5 people, but, I remember the last time when El Dorado Hills, we were really trying to decide whether we should be a city or not. And I just remember the county just bent over backwards to really take care of us. They were promising, you know, a lot more fire protection, all these good things, because I could see that they were seeing a loss of a lot of tax revenue if we became the city. Same thing here today. It seems like you yourself could have a big stick now with them to say, okay, you got to help me out here and vote against this if that's what you want.
You can't do that, that's a Brown Act violation. Supervisor
Okay,
can't talk more than
I
one other person,
understand.
so.
I understand, but I understand these conversations happen, and you know they do, and to say that, hey,
No.
cityhood's coming away, let's, you know, think about
Okay, we're gonna jump into the process real quick so everybody sees it at least once. The important part is that if we can get more participation, typically our subcommittees are maybe 5 people on a big subcommittee, sometimes they're 2 or 3. If we can get people who are there are gonna be impacted to provide their input and to look at it and be honest and find, evidence that demonstrates your concerns, or at least just raise the concerns, so we can put it into a subcommittee report. It gets entered into the draft environmental impact report. They have to answer it, and if we can get mitigations, or maybe it's enough to say that maybe it's not a good thing, and not a good choice for this location. But we'll jump through real quick. John said there's a notice of preparation of the draft environmental impact report, and that comes out. And there's typically also a notice of a public scoping meeting. Scoping meetings are pretty open house. I've been to a couple in this building. I've been at the fire station. It might be at the school right there because it's in close proximity. And at that meeting, there'll be displays, elevations, and they'll sing and dance and put on a show and show you what it's going to be and how great it is. And there'll be cards there at the meeting so you can put your comments in. If you submit comments at that meeting, they get answered in the draft environment, or they get answered in the final with the draft environmental impact report. The applicants there, their representatives there, they answer questions. The draft environmental impact report consultant that the county hires to run the impact report is usually there as well, and they'll answer questions or listen to you. County planning staff's on hand, typically to answer questions, but also to ask questions. And then all your questions and public comments get collected and they get answered in the final. There we go. So this is typically what it looks like when it comes through. You get a letter, or it'll be on the county website. Unless you're in close proximity, you're not getting a letter. We will post it on the impact website when it's out.
Well, 1,000 feet will receive the letters.
How many?
1,000 feet.
1,000 feet.
Notification.
So you get the letter. There might be the letter with the scoping meeting details as well, and then there might even be a general map of the area, a parcel map, and then maybe proposed configuration. It's different on every one of them. So this is a huge list of things that are elements that are considered in a draft environmental impact report. We're out of time, we won't go through them all. But the impacts that could take many months to a year, the impacts that get identified could be there's no impact, there's less than significant impact, there's a significant impact, there's significant impacts, but they could be mitigated to less than significant, or significant but unavoidable, saying, well, it's an impact, we can't do anything about it. But that's part of the decision process. Public usually has a minimum comment period of 30 days, but it can be extended. We will ask for, I think typically it's under 45 days. 45 days, yeah. And then all public comments will receive a response as well as comments from the scoping meeting. So after that process is done, they issue the final. In the final, the comments, recommendations received that we all submit. Usually in El Dorado County, they're all of them are submitted. Sometimes they're in a summary format. Then they list the persons, organizations, and agencies that commented. And then the responses from the lead agency, which will be El Dorado County, to the significant environmental concerns that are in the review and the consultation process. Those answers will be in. A lot of times they'll say this isn't an environmental impact, and as such, it's not part of CEQA, and so they might answer the question, but it also might not make you happy. So
John, there's one thing in the draft EIR that we kind of missed, and that's the alternate project. They have to do
Yeah.
an analysis of alternate projects, and one of the alternate projects is the no project.
No project, yeah.
But they have to identify some other alternatives
Yeah,
and address it to a certain level. So.
Yes, so, and that's at the bottom, that's a experience.
Was it the bottom? Okay.
Yeah, project alternatives, environmentally superior.
Okay.
There's one that, hey, there might be an alternative that is environmentally less impact. And then there's the other alternative is just don't do a project. So, but those all get answered. After this, it goes to the planning commission, A project of this size will probably have a couple meetings, maybe one, but probably a couple. They might do a workshop to present it so the planning commission sees what it looks like before they're ready to formally present it. We all provide additional public comments for those meetings as well. They get entered into the record and planning commission sees them, all the commissioners see them. They will then vote when it comes to a hearing to either accept the project as proposed, issue additional conditions of approval, or reject the project. And if it's rejected, it can be appealed to the Board of Supervisors within 10 business days, and then there's a time frame after that where the Board of Supervisors will hear the appeal. At the Board of Supervisors, it's the same format. We all have an opportunity to submit comments for those hearings and for those agenda items. Supervisors see those as well, and then it's the same process. They will either vote to approve it as it's proposed, ask for some additional conditions, or deny it. If they vote to accept it, they certify the final environmental impact report, and that's it. If it's rejected, the project can be appealed. So that's the process. There are many places where the community can provide input. It is important that you do that, especially if you're right up against it. You should provide input. There'll be neighbors who aren't, like Tim said, he's at the other end of Green Valley Road. If he has some concerns separate from APAC, he provide those inputs as well. But it's an entire community. It's not just that area around the project. But your comments, they should be based in facts, evidence. Opinions are great, we all have them, but at the end of the day, they tend not to sway the decision makers. Emotion helps, but that's mostly for ourselves.
You mentioned sometimes there's only 2 to 3 or maybe 4 to 5 at best for some type of...
Our internal subcommittee, because we're all volunteers, we have 9 voting members.
So how do you become part of that?
There's an email sign up over here. What will happen is we will ask, okay, hey, we need to work on this. Is there anybody in the community who wants to help out? And then the people who have done it before will help you. This is what we do. You might only want to look at, I'm interested in the traffic, or I know about traffic, or I know about environmental, air, sound, noise. I'm concerned about the school, so you might want to pick just those pieces. And if we pick them as pieces, we put them all together, and it's, many hands, light lifting. But if you're on the list, and we will probably, for something that's significant, we typically only email when we say, hey, here's our agenda for the meeting. For something like this, we will email and say, hey, we need people to help out. If you want to do this, and the way we usually do it is through email. You hear where the documents are, you study them, you review them, you have questions. We might not know the answer. You might not know the answer. We can ask. We might not get the answer, but we still ask them. We put it all together, and then the voting members will go ahead and take a look at that subcommittee report and say, hey, the subcommittee recommends, no project or a modified project. Then we have a vote on that. We accept that recommendation, or we not accept it. And the last few we've done, we've been sort of unanimous in accepting. If there's a dissenting opinion, we'll issue a separate opinion. Okay, this is our majority decision. The people who dissented said they don't see a problem with this, and they like this, or they think this is, whatever their reasons are. But to do it with just 3 people, it's heavy lifting. To do it with many people, and to do it with people that are impacted by it, it makes a difference.
So just 2 quick follow-up questions. The 2 or 3 people that you're talking about, is it typically just you guys have historically been on or do you see that residents actually do try to join?
Well, as I mentioned at the beginning, we need some input for a subcommittee for that EDH Folsom storage. There's a resident over there, and I asked, he said he'd be interested in doing it, so I emailed him this week, because we need to do something the next month. He said, yeah, I'll do it. So, if I have to jump in with him, we have a couple of voting members that are here tonight. They might say, yeah, I'm going to look at the traffic on that, or I'll look at the whole thing. That would be John Resler. He'll look at the whole thing.
I was going to say, traditionally, the way we would do things is that people have to buy in to a committee, get into a committee, and we would attempt to guide you in that committee on what you should look for and what you should actually be saying. And then we would put that in a report and submit it.
Or we would let them help write the report.
Or help write the report.
Thank you.
No, I didn't say that.
Well, and oftentimes with the 17 elements in CEQA, You divide and conquer, right? You divide certain transportation. There's 2 or 3 people, like one person's looking at air quality, another person is looking at noise, whatever it is. But it's that collective input that makes the difference.
And then a lot of the pieces of those elements intertwine. So your traffic and your air, sometimes the noise, there are things where they all play. But we're volunteers. Nobody's an expert. We're not planning experts. We're not transportation experts. We just live here.
And will all of the public opportunity meetings, will you guys post those?
Yeah, we post every week. I posted one while I was here tonight at 6:10 p.m. The Board of Supervisors meeting for next, actually, the board,
We don't have a meeting next Tuesday,
was it?
2020.
Was it the planning committee? No, it was the meeting minutes I posted tonight.
Yes.
So, but yeah, on the APAC website, it's always there. And if you follow it on, Facebook or what, you can see it there too. But we post this on the website just so that they're in a consistent place and people can see them. Because sometimes when you go through and you look at 40 or 30 agenda items on the Board of Supervisors, it's overwhelming. You go, well, I don't even know, and it's a wall of text. And so we try to pull out just the Eldorado Hills elements, put them in one area, and then also show the entire agenda. We do that for the Planning Commission as well. I think the Planning Commission, next meeting, I think there's only one item on it that really affects Eldorado Hills.
So your answer is yes, those will be on there?
Yes, and especially when we need help, so.
Who is the planning commission?
The Planning Commission, they're appointed by each district supervisor.
Okay.
Our Planning Commissioner for District 1 is John Vega. And then, I couldn't name him if I thought about it, James Williams. But each district, there are 5 districts, there's 5 planning commissioners, they're appointed, they're volunteers. They typically have some experience in planning, design, development, something. But they are appointed, and they serve a specific term. So, but it's just another part of the process of how you step through. There are things that go to the Planning Commission that don't need to go to the Board of Supervisors. A lot of ministerial type of things for design elements we're so late, it's not even funny.
Call the meeting.
So I'll say that. We need help with the Vineyards project because that's going to be coming back. They want to appear for us. Oh, sorry, I went too far. Our next meeting's May 8th in this room at 7 p.m., another Wednesday. But we need help with Vineyards to look at it again, and we need to help with Eldorado Hills Folsom self-storage because we like to get that wrapped up for May because they anticipate June or July for their planning commission.
And those are actually some of those smaller projects.
They're very small.
They're very small, would probably take about 5 hours at a time. This would be a good way to find out what the process is, what's involved, and you can take what you learn from that. If Costco starts the process to approve it, then you can apply that to the Costco process. So it would be a very good opportunity to start small, build your base of knowledge and experience, and then apply what you learned through vineyards or self-storage, and then take that to the Costco if that happens.
And then I'll also say, if you haven't signed up, the list's over there. Sometimes I can't read them. So if you don't see an email from us in May about our agenda, I probably entered it wrong. So you can go to our website, there's a sign up for our mail list there as well. Typically 1 email a month for the agenda, something like this, where we'll say, hey, we need some help in the community. Are you interested? And if you are, just email back and we'll...
And come up and talk to us. The meeting's officially over. If you have questions, we're going to be here for one.
Thank you, everybody.
That was good to see you.